Hi, boys and girls. I hope you're having a good afternoon. Hope your morning went well. And we're going to keep reading the BFG. So, when we stopped, um, Sophie was talking with the queen, and um, the queen was kind of trying to figure out what was going on because she had these dreams, and all this is happening in real life, too. You did dream that, didn't you, Your Majesty? Sophie asked. The maid was out of it now. She just stood there, goggling. Yes, the queen murmured. Now, you come. Now, come to mention it. I did. But how do you know what I dreamed? Oh, that's a long story, Your Majesty, Sophie said. Would you like for me to call the big friendly giant? The queen looked at the child. The child looked straight back at the queen, her face open and wide and quite serious. The queen simply didn't know what to make of it. Was someone pulling her leg? She wondered. Shall I call him for you? Sophie asked again. You'll like him very much. The queen took a deep breath. Everyone take a deep breath. She was glad no one except her faithful old Mary was here to see what was going on. Very well, she said. You may call your giant. No, wait a moment. Mary, pull yourself together and give me a dressing gown and slippers. The maid did as she was told. The queen got out of bed and put on a pale pink dressing gown and slippers. You may call him now, the queen said. Sophie turned her head towards the garden and called out, BFG, Her Majesty the Queen would like to see you. The queen crossed over to the window and stood beside Sophie. Come down off that ledge, she said. You're going to fall backwards at any moment. Sophie jumped down into the room and stood beside the queen at the open window. Mary, the maid, stood behind them. Her hands were now planted firmly on her hips, and there was a look on her face of which seemed to say, I want no part of this fiasco. I don't see any giant, the queen said. Please wait, Sophie said. Shall I take her away now? The maid asked. Oh, take her downstairs and get her some breakfast, the queen said. Just then, there was a rustle in the bushes beside the lake. Think in your head, what do you think that rustle in the bushes was? Then he came out, 24 feet tall, wearing his black cloak, with the grace of a nobleman, still carrying his long trumpet in one hand. He strode magnificently across the palace lawn towards the window. The maid screamed. The queen gasped. Sophie waved. The BFG took his time. He was very dignified in his approach. When he was close to the window, where the three of them were standing, he stopped and made a slow, graceful bow. His head, after he had straightened it up again, was almost exactly level with the watchers at the window. Your Majesty, he said, I is your humbug servant. And he bowed again. Considering she was meeting a giant for the first time in her life, the queen remained astonishingly self-composed. We are very pleased to meet you, the queen said. Down below, a gardener was coming across the lawn with a wheelbarrow. He caught sight of the BFG's legs over to his left. His gaze traveled slowly upwards along the height of the enormous body. He gripped the handles of the wheelbarrow. He swayed. He tottered. Then he keeled over on the grass in a dead faint. Nobody even noticed him. All right, I'm going to show you this picture. This is the BFG walking towards the queen. And then here is the gardener falling over. "Oh, Magister!" cried the BFG. "Oh, Queen! Oh, Monarcher! Oh, Golden Sovereign! Oh, ruler of straight lines! Oh, Sultana! I is come here with my little friend Sophie to give you a..." The BFG hesitated, searching for the word. "To give me a what?" the Queen asked. Assistance, the BFG said, beaming. The Queen looked puzzled. "Sometimes he speaks a little funny, Your Majesty," Sophie said. "He never went to school." "Well, then, we must send him to school," the Queen said. "We have very good schools in this country." Excuse me, "I has great secrets to tell Your Magister," the BFG said. "Well, I should be delighted to hear them," the Queen said, "but not in my dressing gown." "Shall we get you dressed, ma'am?" asked the maid. Have either of you had breakfast?" the Queen asked Sophie and the BFG. "Oh, could we?" Sophie cried. "Oh, please. I haven't eaten a thing since yesterday." "Well, I was about to have my breakfast," the Queen said, "but Mary dropped it." The maid gulped. "I imagine we have more food in the palace," the Queen said, speaking to the BFG. "Perhaps you and your little friend would like to join me." "Will it be repulsant snozcumbers, Your Magister?" the BFG asked. "Will it be what?" the Queen asked. "Stinky snozcumbers," the BFG said. "What is he talking about?" the Queen asked Sophie. "It sounds like a rude word to me." She turned to the maid and said, "Mary, ask them to serve breakfast for 3 in the... I think it better be in the ballroom. That has the highest ceiling." To the BFG, she said, "I'm afraid you will have to go through the door on your hands and knees. I shall send someone to show you the way." The BFG reached up and lifted Sophie out of the window. "You and I is leaving Her Magister alone to get dressed," he said. "No, leave the little girl here with me," the Queen said. "We'll have to find something for her to put on. She can't have breakfast in her pajamas." The BFG returned Sophie to the bedroom. "Can we have sausages, Your Majesty?" Sophie asked. "And bacon and eggs?" "Oh, I think that might be managed," the Queen answered with a smile. "Just wait till you taste it," Sophie said to the BFG. "No more snozcumbers from now on." Right, and this is a picture of the BFG in the window outside of the Queen's bedroom. And Sophie and the Queen are in the bedroom. All right. I'm going to read a little bit of the next chapter. The Royal Breakfast. There was a frantic scurry among the palace servants when orders were received from the Queen that a 24-foot giant must be seated with Her Majesty in the great ballroom within the next half hour. The butler, named Mr. Tibbs, was in supreme command of all the palace servants, and he did the best he could in the short time available. A man does not rise to become the Queen's butler unless he is gifted with extraordinary ingenuity, adaptability, versatility, dexterity, cunning, sophistication, discretion, and a host of other talents that neither you nor I possess. Mr. Tibbs had them all. He was in the butler's pantry sipping an early morning glass of light ale when the order reached him. In a split second, he had made the following calculations in his head. If a normal 6-foot man requires a 3-foot high table to eat off of, a 24-foot giant will require a 12-foot high table. Now, I just want you guys to think about something. Usually ceilings are about 8 feet. Okay, so a table, think of a table, he needs it to be 12 feet high. So that's a ceiling plus 4 more feet. That's how high the table needs to be. Everything, Mr. Tibbs told himself, must be multiplied by 4. 2 breakfast eggs must become 8. 4 rations of bacon must become 16. 3 pieces of toast must become 12, and so on. These calculations about food were immediately passed on to Monsieur Papillion, the royal chef. Mr. Tibbs skimmed into the ballroom. Butlers don't walk, they skim over the ground, followed by a whole army of footmen. The footmen all wore knee breeches, and every one of them displayed beautifully rounded calves and ankles. There is no way you can become a royal footman unless you have a well-turned ankle. It's the first thing they look at when you're interviewed. Push the grand piano into the center of the room, Mr. Tibbs whispered. Butlers never raise their voices above the softest whisper. 4 footmen moved the piano. Now, fetch a large chest of drawers and put it on top of the piano, Mr. Tibbs whispered. 3 other footmen fetched a very fine Chippendale mahogany chest of drawers and placed it on top of the piano. That will be his chair, Mr. Tibbs whispered. It is exactly 8 feet off the ground. Now, we shall make a table upon which this gentleman may eat his breakfast in comfort. Fetch me 4 very tall grandfather clocks. There are plenty of them around the palace. Let each clock be 12 feet high. 16 footmen spread out across the palace to find the clocks. They were not easy to carry, and they required 4 footmen for each one. Place the 4 clocks in a rectangle 8 feet by 4 feet alongside the grand piano, Mr. Tibbs whispered. The footman did so. Now, fetch me the young prince's ping-pong table, Mr. Tibbs whispered. The ping-pong table was carried in. Unscrew the legs and take those away. Now, place this ping-pong table on top of the 4 grandfather clocks. To manage this, the footmen had to stand on stepladders. All right, and I am going to stop there. On Monday, we will read more about the palace breakfast. Okay, so here is a picture of the footman carrying the big clock. Okay. All right, boys and girls. I hope you have a great afternoon, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I can't wait to see you all on Monday. Bye, guys.